Hello, and welcome to my presentation, Helping Students to Think Critically. I'm Rita Shiano. Rena Paleth and Keith Pratt, in the book Building Online Learning Communities, write, "Evidence of critical thinking and of knowledge acquired are the desired learning outcomes." So how do we teach critical thinking? The online learning environment can be daunting, especially for adult learners coming back to school after many years. Tentativeness is normal, and so students may need guidance on how to direct their thinking, both critically and creatively. For this presentation, however, I'll be focusing solely on critical thinking. So what is critical thinking? Critical thinking comprises a number of different skills that help us learn to make decisions. It is the ability to evaluate information to determine whether it is right or wrong. To think critically about an issue or a problem means to be open-minded and consider alternative ways of looking at solutions without jumping to conclusions or making assumptions. Critical thinking is reflexive thinking. It is about identifying and challenging assumptions. Author Don Miguel Ruiz, in his book The Four Agreements, wrote, "We make assumptions and we believe we are right about the assumptions. Then we defend our assumptions and try to make someone else wrong." When explaining critical thinking to your students, there are certain standards that must be applied. For example, is the information accurate? Is it relevant? Is it complete? You want to encourage the student to have clarity, precision, fairness, and accuracy in their responses. Encourage them to be clear about their point of view. To do this, you can ask them some questions such as, what are you inferring? Or what are you assuming? And what would be the implications of your point of view? And remind them that even though these are asynchronous discussions, they should think of it as having a dialogue with someone. Socratic questioning is at the heart of critical thinking and is a learning-centered approach that challenges students to develop their critical thinking skills and engage in analytic discussion. What I wanted to share with you next is adapted from Dr. Richard Paul's 6 types of Socratic questions. He begins with questions for clarification. These would be questions such as, why do you say that? Or how does this relate to our discussion? Number 2, questions that probe assumptions. For example, what could we assume instead? How can you verify or disapprove that assumption? Or on what basis do we think this way? Number 3 are questions that probe reasons and evidence. Examples would be, what is this analogous to? What would be an example? Or what do you think causes this to happen? Number 4 are questions about viewpoints and perspectives. Again, examples would be, what would be an alternative? Or you might ask the student, what would be another way to look at this? Or why is that considered to be the best? Or perhaps you might want to say, what are the strengths and weaknesses of this argument? Or what is a counter-argument? Number 5 deals with questions that probe implications and consequences. Examples would be, what generalizations can you make? What are the consequences of that assumption? What are you implying? How does X affect Y? Or how does X tie in with what we've learned before? And lastly, number 6, Dr. Richard Paul suggests Questions about the question. Again, you might ask your students, what was the point of this question? Or why do you ask this question? Or what does X mean? Or how does X apply to everyday life? In addition to using the Socratic method, here are a few other strategies. Encourage your students to study with open-mindedness. One method they can employ involves developing a frame of reference by listing what they already know about the subject. Encourage them to determine the facts without prejudice. Again, have them make a list of opinions or prejudices they may already have about the topic. And the list should include what they have read, what they have watched, and what they have been told. Doing these steps will help the student to accept or reject the source values and conclusions based upon their experience, judgments, and beliefs. Encourage your students to study with open-mindedness. One method they can employ involves developing a frame of reference by listing what they already know about the subject. Encourage them to determine the facts without prejudice. Again, have them make a list of opinions or prejudices they may already have about the topic. And the list should include what they have read, what they have watched, and what they have been told. Doing these steps will help the student to accept or reject the source values and conclusions based upon their experience, judgments, and beliefs. I hope this video has given you a jumping off point towards helping your students to think critically. There is a wealth of resources available on this topic, and the following are some of the books and articles I've referenced in preparation for this presentation. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this.